Welcome to Around Town, featuring what's happening here in the Concord area. I'm your host, Dick Patton. It's a pleasure to welcome you back on this supposedly May 1st spring day, but who knows? I don't know. It feels more like December 1st. But anyway, I'm pleased to have with me State Representative Dave Luneau, who represents Concord Ward 5 as well as Hopkinton, and I'm glad to see him here. He and I have had quite a little jousting beforehand, but that's why if it wasn't because of Dave, I wouldn't do it, because I like Dave and I've respected him always when I was in the legislature. But still, he's a good guy, and I hope he gets back in there next year. If he decides that, or if he runs the state senate, one or the other. You gotta run the state senate.
Well, I like what I'm doing right now. I think it's important work, whether it's in the House or the Senate. But
if the Senate opens up, you should run for it.
Well, thank you very much for your vote of confidence.
Well, hey, the hell, I think you should.
So,
but anyway, it's good to have you here, and you're on education. You said now, so what's going? One of the things I know when I was there that was bothering me, I know it was a hot topic, was they wanted to pay the private schools. We're looking, especially the charter schools, were looking for money, much as the public schools. Is that coming up this year again? Or was that gone by with, or was that?
well, the governor actually put it in his budget. He nearly doubled tuition for tuition assistance for charter schools. And you might already know this, Dick, and maybe some of your viewers know this too. But charter schools receive twice the state adequacy dollars that other public schools get. So, it's sort of hard to say that what the state provides for public schools is adequate if they feel that that charter schools are owed double that.
So are we going to put the public schools out of business then?
Well, this is the direction that Sununu's taking it. I mean, he would like to see us privatize education. You certainly saw his efforts on the voucher bill last year, and we were able to, as a minority party last year, defeat that. And you were there for that, Dick, and that. That required a lot of organization and a lot of work, and being able to bring a number of Republicans over to really understand the damage that type of effort would cause, not only to school districts across the state, but also the costs that would go up for property taxpayers. So in the end, the legislature got the job done, but that's not slowing down the governor. Any attempt he can do to privatize schools, to really take away support from public education. He seems to be making that effort along with his commissioner in the Department of Education.
I was going to say, isn't that coming a little bit from the Commissioner of Education? Because wasn't he more or less for charter schools? There was something about him, I remember, when he was a candidate for governor, that he was kind of bloating a little bit. Now all of a sudden he got appointed commissioner, but I don't know. I feel bad for public schools if that's the case. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I mean, towns like Pittsfield, I'm sure, and some of them other ones up Claremont and those up there in the northern sector. I mean, it's got to be tough if that's the case.
Well, I think it's incredibly tough, and as you mentioned, I'm vice chair of the House Education Committee, and as we were developing, our bills and the budget during the first half of this session, we heard from superintendents and school board members from Berlin and Pittsfield and Claremont, and in these school districts from all across the state. And they would use words like demoralizing when they've had to close down their last elementary school.
Oh yeah.
And when you hear stories, from towns that honestly are right down the road from us. So we're really fortunate here in the capital area with schools like like Concord and Bow and Hopkinton, which I think all have very strong, tremendous, high quality school districts, and but you don't have to go 10 minutes up the road to Pittsfield, as you mentioned, and where they've had to discontinue their world language program, and now world languages are taught via Rosetta Stone with instructional assistants there to keep the students on track. So they don't even have a teaching faculty for world language, and that's the state of that some of our districts have to get to because of the way we fund them.
And just up the road here, we've got a charter school meeting in the mall up here. That makes sense. So look at the money they must be paying to rent up at the mall. I just don't understand it, but anyhow. Then on another note, the gambling thing, I know the Keno seems to be taking a hold, I guess, because Concord did vote it in. So we don't have Keno here, but is that still making a difference? And that's going for education, right?
Well, like all of our lottery revenues, that drops to the Education Trust Fund. The governor had basically used full day kindergarten as a way to get Keno into the state, and actually shortchanged full day kindergarten with it. So he certainly didn't invent full day kindergarten. In fact, more than 70% of school districts had already introduced full day kindergarten programs, despite not receiving any support from the state for the second half, the full day part of kindergarten. And even when the governor tangled it up here with Keno, he still failed to provide the same amount of funding that are provided for grades 1 through 12. So and when he sent his budget over a couple months ago, it didn't change any of that. So it was the same old adequacy grant numbers that go down and down, chipping away at the stabilization, which is, and these are funds that support school districts like Pittsfield and Berlin and Claremont, and are really necessary to prop up a bad formula. So.
Brian's asking me, are all New Hampshire school budgets run by city or towns, or are they specifically independent?
So that's a great question. It depends on the city. So in Manchester, the school board or school committee is actually chaired by the mayor, and in Concord, the school board has total authority over the school budget. And then in a town like Hopkinton, we actually have a school district meeting, and the budget that's prepared by the school board and the budget committee comes to the school district meeting, and the voters.
Well, a lot of them do. Chichester does, Pittsfield does. They all have their school district meetings, but Merrimack Valley does. They have them prior to the town meetings.
Right.
So
So it does depend on the town you're in as to how that works.
What do you think about you in another year or so? They're going to redistrict again. Do you think you're going to go back to Hopkinton totally? Are they going to keep you in Ward 5 Concord, or what's going to happen?
I have no idea how that will happen. So that won't happen for the next election cycle. It'll happen following the next election cycle.
2021.
So, right. So and I would hesitate to try to predict what an independent redistricting commission would do, but I'm certainly very much in favor of independent redistricting and taking it out of the politicians' hands.
Oh, I agree.
And get rid of gerrymandering, which has gotten so scientific and so spot on right now that entire parties can essentially be gerrymandered out of being able to be a majority party again, and I think that's a dangerous outcome for voters and for all of us here in New Hampshire, but also across the country.
It's going to be interesting how that works for you, because, or who they have put on that committee, because they don't want politicians, but yet I bet you there'll be a lot of them on there somehow. But well, that's good. Then.
Well, that's this is something so this is a bill that is it's House Bill, I believe it's House Bill 706, and it passed the House. It's over in the Senate right now, and hope that it's going to clear the Senate and go on to the governor, and I certainly hope that Sununu will take a serious look at this, because I think it really does help put the electorate back in control.
What are we going to do about, now I know the Columbus Day, what's happening with that? I see Maine just got rid of that, the name Columbus, and going to that indigenous, whatever it is, People's Day.
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Right.
So I haven't studied that issue a lot, Dick, but for the people that have, I think they make a good point, and when we recognize our heroes here in the United States, we do it for a reason, that they do represent who we are as a people, and I think the beliefs that we all have, and if Christopher Columbus really worked against that, then maybe he doesn't deserve to be recognized the way we do.
Who started it in the first place? Really?
I don't. Yeah. So.
I
So
mean, really.
clearly there were people here before Christopher Columbus
I
stepped
mean,
foot.
it's
so.
like, I don't know where that started from, but really, I mean, I just don't like the name Indigula. I'd like to see something more, I don't know, general, or more something, that fits in the mold of our holidays. I don't know, I don't know, that word. Ask some of the kids or whatever how to pronounce that word, or even some of us older adults. It's like, yeah, okay.
Well, maybe it'll help people be able to pronounce the word.
Oh yeah, sure.
So.
Go back to Fast Day like we used to have here in New Hampshire. You remember that, don't you?
The what?
Fast Day.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. Go back to Fast Day. Have Fast Day again like we used to have. But I don't know. I just wondered where that was sitting in the legislature there. And do you think we're going to have, I mean, I know with the primary coming up in February, ought to be a joke with all those people running, but you know darn well after that primary, 3/4 of them are going to drop out like flies, really.
Well, I think that tends to be, what happens in primaries as front runners really develop and start receiving really the bulk of campaign contributions nationally, and I'm really happy that New Hampshire continues to be a leader in vetting the people who are seeking that office. So
I mean, it just seems like, my gosh. And then there again, you're talking about money. Look at the money they're raising. But yet, if you're trying to raise money for a local project, you can't get anything. Nothing's available. The corporations are, we're already given to what? Somebody's campaign. I mean, it's terrible. But something local, you can't get it. You try and try and try, and it's like, forget it. It's very discouraging.
Sure.
But, okay, is the attempt at starting history books at a date later than 1776, is that a political bias? I never heard of that. I hadn't heard that one. Have you?
I'm not sure I understand the starting.
Is the attempt at starting history books at a date later than, in other words,
Starting after the Revolution?
Yeah, is that a political bias? Why would they want to? I wouldn't think they would want to. Why would they want to do it? They do?
Yeah,
Brian seems to know.
I've really never heard of that attempt before, and you know, I spent 12 years on the Hopkinton School Board, and have never heard that, but if people are, I would say that, yeah, that's probably a political bias on there, and I, you know, I think how our country got started, you know, was an important.
Yeah, I'd like to know
Yeah.
where we came. I love history, and world history and U.S. history, you know,
Yeah.
and I'd like to know. I mean, obviously we came from England. Most
Yeah,
of us did.
yeah.
At least the New Englanders did.
Yeah.
There are some from Dutch and Texas School Textbook
Yep.
Company.
Yep, and actually that's what I was going to reference too, because you know, they took out some other aspects that I think are important to our historical context, such as, you know, Hillary Rodham Clinton's run for the presidency. They didn't feel that even makes a mark in our history. And
Oh, I don't know.
so yeah, but no, the Texas textbook company had.
What happened to common sense?
Well, I think.
Really? I mean, think about it. What happened to common sense? Really? You know,
Depends on who you ask.
yeah, really.
So
I mean, really, Dave. I mean, whatever happened to just plain common sense? No. That's the thing. It's sad.
Mhm.
Don't you think so?
yeah, well, I think you can't chalk things up to common sense anymore. You really have to. There's a reason why somebody may think something is common sense, and two people that have a different perspective might feel very strongly about something, or and have opposite opinions and feel that both are common sense. So I think if you think it's common sense, be prepared to defend your position on that, and because somebody else may not feel it that way, but that's okay. That's okay.
I just think sometimes so much stuff is wasted on something that could be just plain settled by common sense. No, I mean, look at when we were in there, when I was in there. I mean, look at the different lineup. Of course, you lost some of the ones that were there, but every time you turned around, roll call. And it was so foolish, because when the thing come out 300 to 20, you know, or whatever, it's like, well, that was a waste of time.
Well, there's still a lot of that nonsense,
There is?
you know, going on.
I thought-
Maybe not as bad as it had been the last couple of sessions,
Really?
but no, you're still getting roll call votes of 305 to 22, stuff like that. I mean, I'm making up a number,
Yeah,
but you know, those sorts of real lopsided votes.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it's. They're tied in with dilatory tactics, trying to slow things down, especially if you've got a long calendar, lots of bills on the agenda, on the calendar for that day, and you know, Dick, as the day gets long, some people have to go home. Some people have other jobs. Some people, you know, have family obligations to go back to, or childcare, and you know, and so the Republicans have really, you know, embraced a lot of these tactics to wear people down. I don't think it's a way that helps to make good legislation.
Oh, interesting. What do we got for time? We only got a few more minutes. 10? Okay, because I have another show coming in, but and what time are you going to back to the State House then, Dave?
Well, there's always more stuff to do. I've got a 3 o'clock for sure, but I'd be happy to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in the Education Committee.
Sure. Yeah.
And you know, when and you probably heard this too. When you're out knocking on doors, campaigning, it doesn't matter if you're running for state rep, or if you're running for the Senate, or you're running for school board or select board or city council, but first thing people ask is, what are you doing about education funding? And what are you doing about my property taxes?
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I think across the state, these are universal concerns. And it doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter how much money you make, but they want to know what the state's doing about it. Well, what the governor's doing about it is nothing, because what he sends over with the budget is basically the same thing that we've been doing forever. You know, short of substantial new funds to support charter schools or privatization and efforts like that, but nothing to really address public school funding, which of course, as I think most people know, is a leading factor in property taxes. So what we've done in the Education Committee, and we work closely with the House Finance Committee, to now in the House budget, is to restore the stabilization funds, which were chipped away at by 4% a year, and so for school districts like you know, Pittsfield, that meant came to about $90,000 a year. So that's losing a teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's raising property taxes.
Yeah.
And by you know, by now almost $1 on the tax rate is associated with what the Republicans did 2 sessions ago to really destroy the stabilization grant formula. So we've restored that. That's an immediate infusion of cash and financial support to school districts that are the most vulnerable, that rely on these funds. So that would happen immediately for the next school year. Second part of it is an intermediate part of the solution, which takes a look at the fiscal capacity that school districts across the state have, and provide additional support to the ones that are below average in their ability to raise money through local tax dollars. So these are property poor, less than the average property wealth per pupil. And then in the long term, establishing a commission, and we would do this starting this coming fall, that would really look into what the state needs to do to adequately fund public education and how we're going to pay for it, and recommend a solution to the legislature. So that's the Democratic plan on how to do it. We actually had strong support from our friends on the other side when it was proposed, but when it came time to put it in the budget and pay for it, we didn't get a single Republican vote. And so that's why I call it the Democratic budget now. And this is our education plan, and we you know, I think we worked hard to develop it. We worked hard to figure out how to pay for it, and that's in the budget. So when you believe in it, you put it in the budget.
So Brian's asking, is the attempt at charter type schools or homeschooling an attempt to lower the tax base?
I don't think it's, that's a good question. I don't think it's an attempt to lower the tax base. I think it's an attempt to put additional strains on public schools, because when you know, as you pull people out of school districts, then or students out of school districts, then the way we fund schools in New Hampshire is really tied to enrollment. So for every student that leaves a school district, that's you know, when you add on base adequacy and some of the other supports that you have, that could be $5,000 or $6,000 per pupil, and you know, people leave school districts for a lot of different reasons, and I get that. But what we need to be doing in New Hampshire is really supporting our public schools, providing them with the opportunity, the funds they need to be able to improve instruction and meet the needs of all our students. And that's the very unique role that a public school has that a private school does not have. And private schools can pick and choose. Public schools can't. And we have to be there for everybody. And you know, I think this is it is a human rights issue. It is a civil rights issue, and it's one of the main things that makes us who we are, not just here in New Hampshire but across the country. And having that strong foundation in public education makes us all stronger, and we should be supporting, not tearing down that effort.
I know, 'cause I hate to see the thoughts of the public school losing dollars. I mean, after all, you know, I mean, I went to public schools. I don't think I suffered it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to public schools.
Really?
Both our kids went to public schools, and you know, I feel that they both received a very strong education. But we're fortunate, like we were talking about earlier, you know, going to schools, you know, right here in this capital area. We have very good schools.
Yeah, we know.
Education's expensive. The property taxpayers, Concord, Bow, and Hopkinton, have all stepped up and said we're going to support this. It certainly makes for a challenging school district meeting, but for a lot of other places like Pittsfield, like Newport, I mean, 20 minutes up the road from Hopkinton, Claremont, Berlin, they're beyond their ability to run programs that I think most people would consider to be really basic for public education.
Don't you think, in a way, I know we're coming to a close, but don't you think, we've got to close. I got another show coming, and he's got to get back to the State House too. I'm going to be fair to him. But don't you think that, go back to when I was in school, we'll take 1965, 1962, I was in elementary, 64, 65 in junior high school, and then high school and graduate and so. But we didn't have all these computers back then. I mean, yeah, maybe the 12th grade might have had an old version of a computer. But today, you've got kids in preschool that know how to use a computer, kindergarten, and we didn't. When we went to kindergarten.
Sure, but when you know, when you went to kindergarten, Dick, and when I went to kindergarten, personal computers didn't exist, and the computing industry was still in its infancy. I would say that when you were probably, you know, when you were a senior in high school, if you said that there was an old computer, probably old by today's standards, but not by those standards. It was probably brand new, because there really weren't such things. You couldn't go to Best Buy. Well, of course, Best Buy didn't exist either. But you know, computers are ubiquitous in our society, and yes, you know, kindergartners are using it, first graders are using them, and you know, it's part of society now. Now, I can certainly agree with some of the recommendations that we've heard of this last week about reducing screen time and things like that, and making sure that early learners are having quality human interaction with their parents, with their teachers, and family members. And I think that's very important for brain dedevelopment. But I wouldn't take computers out of schools.
All right, you got started way before what I want to do. I was just using that as an example, because I was going to go on to look at the sports programs.
Yeah.
We only had football, maybe baseball, basketball, maybe some hockey when I was in school. Now look at it. You've got everything from lacrosse to field hockey to whatever to whatever to whatever. Tournaments all over the place.
Yep.
Then you go to special needs. You've got that whole area now, which before Concord schools just went to the moral school for their training. Well, now everything's incorporated. So that's where I was going to go with it. We've got to come to a close from around town. It's been really fun having you here, and hopefully get you on again maybe when you get another break or something coming up or whatever. But so we've been talking with State Representative Dave Luneau from the Ward 5 in Concord and Hopkinton he represents. So any questions, give him a call or stop up and see him at the State House.
Look forward to it.
Have a great day. Thanks for joining us around town. I'm your host, Dick Patton.